Chairman of the Oversight Investigation Subcommittee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Ms. Yellen. When you were here in October, we had an exchange about our lawful subpoena that we made to the Fed. You were unwilling to comply with that subpoena. However, 2 weeks ago, you did comply with that lawful House subpoena, and we are grateful for your cooperation with the House Oversight Committee. In your cover letter, when you provided those documents, you stated that as chair, I have implemented the practice of immediately referring to the Inspector General all suspected material security breaches involving FOMC information. Why is that your personal practice, and why isn't that the policy of the Fed?
Well, the policy of the Fed that was adopted back in 2011, I believe, stated that if the chair was alerted to a breach, that the procedure would involve asking the FOMC's General Counsel and Secretary to review the matter and to decide whether or not it should be referred to the Inspector
I'm aware of that, but
General.
don't every January don't you meet in regard to the leak policy on the program for security of FOMC information, and you set the policy every year. And since you've been chair, you haven't made that the new policy. You've only made that the personal practice. You could this January change that rule and make it policy, not practice, right?
Well, if it seems appropriate to look at it, it's something that we could do.
So let's go.
My understanding of the existing policy, I'm simply trying to say my understanding of the existing policy is that if there is a material breach, it should be referred to the Inspector General. And well, I have done that. That's been my practice, and I think that ought to be the understanding.
And you can change the policy, I think, this coming January, and I think with all that's happened, you should actually change it from personal practice to policy. But it brings me to a question about the policy. The way it currently is written, if there is a leak, you'll have the FOMC Secretary and the General Counsel perform a review and then make a request potentially to the Inspector General. But it's fair to say that the General Counsel, who would make the recommendation for referral, also is privy to sensitive information, which would mean that there could be a conflict of interest, that the General Counsel could actually be the leaker, and he's also, or she's also, the one that's responsible for referring the matter to the IG. Do you see the conflict there? And I think this is ripe for some internal policy review at the Fed. I mean, I'd encourage you to take that under consideration.
Well, let me simply say that I think maintaining the confidentiality of sensitive information is, to me, a very high priority.
I know, but that's not my point. I think that you can see there's an issue here on how the policy works internally, and I think you could work on changing it. I only have a couple minutes left. The Wall Street Journal recently reported that the White House and Treasury were made aware of the 2012 leak. Is that true before Congress was made aware in December of 2014?
Not to the best of my knowledge.
But you were aware that they were doing a background check on Mr. Carpenter for a potential nomination from the Fed to Treasury, correct? You're aware of that process? You're not aware of that?
I know that he has been nominated to be Assistant Secretary.
And as part of a background review, are you telling me that they did not reach out to the Fed and ask about his access to this information that was involved in the leak, and you did not provide that to the White House?
I don't have direct knowledge of that.
Do you have any indirect knowledge of that?
That's a particular matter pertaining to an employee. It has to do with the Treasury, and I would...
Here's my, Madam Chair, here's my concern, that we find out in Congress who have the oversight over the Fed, and we find out in December of 2014. However, before the nomination, the White House has this information about the leak. The White House and Treasury that don't have any oversight over the Fed are made privy to not just the internal investigation at the Fed, but also they received the IG investigation. And so it brings
I'm not aware that that's correct. I think it would be maybe standard practice for an agency that's considering a nomination to do a background check, and that might involve asking the previous employer as part of the government.
I would agree with
about
that. And also,
individual.
it's common practice for the Oversight Committee to send subpoenas that are lawful to the agencies in which they oversee, and that agency actually comply with those subpoenas in a timely manner.
I have done my best to do that, and
Thank you.
I believe we have now fully complied.
You have. Thank you.
Time of the gentleman has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Clay, ranking member of the Financial and